I'm a member of the SWA Secretariat team and am joined by my colleagues Satali and Siddhartha, which I'm sure that many of you know very well. Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning, good evening to some of you who are joining from other parts of the world. The discussion for today is focused on what the mutual accountability mechanism commitments tell us, those that have been tabled tell us so far, and what must be done to achieve them. So I'm going to keep this introduction very brief because it's a very information-filled webinar discussion. We're very fortunate to have presentations also from Nepal and Bhutan. But first we're going to start the discussion focusing on some initial analyses that the SWA Secretariat team has done on, again, those commitments that have been tabled up to this point, as well as the country briefs, which were a tool prepared it's part of the preparatory tools, let's put it that way, that many partners used for the sector ministers meeting this past April. And again, the Secretariat has done initial analyses. We're hopeful that we can do some more in-depth look at the information with partners in the coming months, but we wanted to share this with partners at this point in time. So the first part of the presentation will be given by Satali, and we'll take a look at those commitments. Satali, are you ready to take over?
I am ready to start, Marisa, and thank you so much once again for the introduction. Marisa, I think you mentioned that people should put their names in the chat. So just a reminder again that we should all put our names in the chat. And if you're joining with other people, please just indicate who else you might be joining with. So as Marisa says, this part of the presentation will specifically look at the commitments that we received, and we will give a very quick snapshot of what those commitments tell us. You will be able to find these commitments also on our website. And so you can also take a closer look on the website and see what commitments we have. So top line information, we received more than 300 commitments since this year began. And those commitments were tabled by 47 governments and 18 other partners. In fact, 17 other partners plus a consolidation of commitments from the private sector, or rather the private sector as a group also made specific commitments in addition to the commitments that were made by specific private sector agencies. Now, the process of tabling these commitments, just to take you back, that the mutual accountability mechanism was approved last year, and we had consultations at SACOSAN, we had consultations in other regions as well, to specifically look at, to get input from partners on what they thought this mutual accountability mechanism should focus on. So since this year began, we started receiving commitments from both what are called the pioneer countries, but also from generally other partners. And the process that these commitments have come through, or rather the process that partners have used to develop these commitments, has generally been a collaborative process. In a number of countries, this process has been led by governments in most of the countries. There are a number of countries where the process was triggered by other partners in terms of getting the first discussion going with the government and getting the government to bring people together and have the process to get started. So we've had the countries and partners that put commitments forward. They relied on a number of information sources, including, for example, the GLASS process, or information that partners were putting together to submit for their GLASS survey. Just 1 second. Okay. So the process, as I said, was collaborative in most cases with the leadership of the government and the involvement of a number of constituencies, and that has also led to the commitments that we have, both from the government, but also commitments tabled by other non-government partners. Just in terms of summary, like I said, we've had commitments from 47 governments. You will see that list very soon. We've had commitments from private sector agencies, those that are operating at national level. In 4 countries, we've had commitments tabled in those 4 countries from private sector, and 4 commitments also at the global level. We've had civil society agencies that have tabled commitments in 15 countries, and then 3 at the global level. The research and learning agencies have tabled, we have 5 commitments from 5 agencies at national level, and then another 4 at the global level. For external support agencies, we have commitments from 48. We have commitments from external support agencies that have been tabled in 48 countries. And then at the global level, we have 7 partners that have tabled commitments. So just so you get to see the 47 countries that we've mentioned, you could look through there. Just in the event that you may not be aware whether your country has submitted commitments or not, please just look through this list very quickly and see if you'll see your country there. Then just know that that country has shared commitments with us. And you could follow up with the focal point or ask us in case you needed information about the focal point. So then you could get to see what the commitments for that specific country, what those commitments are. And if you do need that kind of information, please just put it in the chat as well. If you see a country here for which you would like to have a copy of the commitments, please let us know. This slide is just a sample of the commitments that we have received from one of the countries on this call, and that is Pakistan. You will get to see other samples, or we will get to see the commitments of Nepal and Bhutan shortly. But also the reason we thought of showing you this slide is that you've got commitments tabled by the government, commitments tabled by civil society, and then some commitments also put forward by private sector. At the global level, these are the partners that have tabled commitments. We've got the 17 agencies, and then the 18th one is the private sector that also tabled commitments as a group, and this is something that we were encouraging partners to do, to table commitments together or to also table individually. Now I see that there are people who might be having audio difficulties. If you're having problems to hear me, please just put your name, your phone number in the chat, and I will try to call you right away. So I will do that for Suranga, just so you could also hear us on phone. Okay. So what's in these commitments? We've tried to group these commitments by specific categories, looking at some of the categories that are very specific to leave no one behind, and also generally looking at the commitments in view of what the SWA framework is about. So 9 countries put forward commitments that are very specific to the elimination of inequalities, and we've got 22 countries that also specifically also delved in deeper to look at commitments that relate to open defecation. Some of these have got a target of achieving open defecation free status in the next 5 years, some going up to 2025, and very few going even beyond 2030. We have at least one country with a target of 2035, and then another, I think, one country with a target of 2050. 29 countries were very specific on sanitation, more generally maybe looking at fecal sludge management, fecal waste management, and other aspects of the sanitation ladder. 6 countries very specific on hygiene, and then 11 countries also focusing on financing. And you'll get to hear more about some of the analysis around financing, whether it is in terms of raising more resources from the public sector, or whether it is advocating for more resources from donors, or it is looking at other ways of closing the financing gap through, for example, the engagement of private sector actors. And then 14 countries talked about financing strategies and mechanisms for closing the financing gap. And we had 30 countries that are looking to develop WASH strategies and plans in the next 3 to 5 years. So just roughly what you see here is the broad categorization of the commitments. Quite a number, in fact, also looking at information systems, monitoring and information systems, which, as we are discovering, is becoming to be quite a significant area of interest. We had commitments by research and learning in 4 countries, research and learning agencies in 4 countries. Excuse me. And we also had commitments about research and learning in 4 countries. So the difference here is that research and learning agencies in 4 countries tabled their own commitments, and then there were also commitments that are generally about getting more evidence, getting a better understanding of what's going on, and to be able to develop or use research to improve services delivery. And that's in 4 countries, and 4 of these also from multinational actors that are supporting work in different countries. So what you see here are the range of some of the commitments on research and learning, looking, for example, in Bhutan, establishing partnerships which and also institutes for improved skills and research for the sector. And you hear more about Bhutan as well in further discussions. So, I mean, for colleagues on this call, we've got some of these commitments from Bhutan, Laos, Indonesia, that focus specifically on research. And then we had commitments from private sector, as I said before. These commitments. Okay, sorry about that. And I'll just check to see if there's any other person who would like to be called in. Okay. So we also have commitments from private sector, and you may or may not know, but the private sector is a relatively young constituency in SWA, and they did a very good job in terms of mobilizing, in terms of specifically looking at what they would like to do at country level. And we also got some specific commitments coming through that constituency, either commitments focusing on private sector or commitments developed specifically by the private sector. So, for example, in Ethiopia, the government there is interested in improving the enabling environment to make sure that it's conducive also for private sector operations, but also to build private sector capacity to provide solutions for the sector. Indonesia, for example, looking to strengthen partnerships, including with private sector for services delivery. So there are quite a range of private sector focused commitments as well. Now, some of the initial analysis on the commitments tabled by the external support agencies, like I said, we had 47. We had commitments through UNICEF from 47 countries. This means UNICEF national offices in 47 countries tabling commitments either alongside their government counterparts or as they try to get their government counterparts to table those commitments. And we had WSSCC also doing the same in 1 country, which is Nigeria. And then at the global level, we have 7 agencies that have also tabled those commitments. So, for example, if I picked the commitment of the Netherlands, and this is a commitment that they've had for a couple of years now, where they're looking to improve access to water for 30 million people and to adequate equitable sanitation and hygiene for 50 million people by 2030. This is a commitment that they've also tabled globally, and they're keeping to that priority. We also have commitments from USAID, for example, which is aiming to increase coordination of actors in priority countries, and these are priority countries that they've identified. WHO and WSSCC similarly have also tabled commitments, as well as SDC and DFID. So just some further summary here. That for civil society, the civil society actors have tabled commitments in 15 countries, and at the global level, we have 3 civil society actors that have tabled commitments. Some of these are focusing on sector funding, either increasing financing or looking at innovative models, or looking at efforts to mobilize additional financing. That's in 5 countries, and then in 10 countries, civil society looking to increase WASH services, to increase specifically access to services. The civil society have also looked at the budget tracking as one of a key as a key area for their intervention, and that's in at least 10 countries where they are looking at either budget tracking or shadow reporting, or strengthening accountability and transparency mechanisms. So that's in summary the commitments from private sector. No, sorry, from civil society. Now, moving forward, all the actors that have tabled commitments, they also have a chance to look back at these commitments and see if you want to improve them. And so some of the key things that we have noted are that some of the commitments do not have a time frame. They are very loosely formed without, and they're not really time bound. So we're encouraging all partners, whether you're tabling new commitments or looking back at your current commitments, please set a time frame and anchor those commitments in the National Development Plan, and ensure that they are developed in a multi-stakeholder process. Ensure that they're also realistic. Basically, just try to make them smart, and provide a complete, non-ambiguous statement. Some of the statements we got were convoluted or were not complete, and we could not really understand what the initial intention was. And focus on actions that your organization is also responsible for. And if you're tabling commitments, again, we're using this platform that's called Airtable, which is the database that we have. If you're a government, you would use the first link that we're showing here. And if you're an organization such as, let's just say, the World Bank, for example, you would use the second link if you're operating at a country level. So, for example, UNICEF in Nepal, for example, could use the second link to submit their own commitments, and at the global level, it is that final link there that has been put. So I will end at this point, and just to see if there are any questions on this presentation so far.
Thank you so much, Sitali. Definitely opening the floor for questions. The only one we've received so far is about the availability of the PowerPoint, which we will for sure share and also post on the SWA website. But are there questions that others have? Happy to have you write them in the chat, or we can open up your mic and you can ask them. No takers. Okay. Well, thank you again, Sitali. Siddhartha, are you ready?
Yeah, sure, Marisa. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you. Yep. So Siddhartha will take us through the next set of slides that, again, are on our initial analysis of the country briefs.
Thanks a lot, Marisa. Thanks a lot, Sitali, and very good morning to everyone. So Sitali has already given an overview of the country briefs. What I'll do is that I'll just highlight a few of the facts which has helped in strengthening the entire process through these country briefs. So basically what has been found is that these country briefs is not only a document which will help us in making the future plans, it has also helped in the overall process of sector strengthening. The development of these country briefs have followed a multi-phase process in most of the countries. In most of the countries, it has been a multi-stakeholder process, and most of the countries have also tried to align it to the existing national processes and also the regional processes like Africa SAN or SACO-SAN in case of South Asian countries. So the way it has helped is that these country briefs, while it was being developed, it has also helped in informing and prepare the ministers for the sector ministers meeting. There were a lot of ministers who attended the sector ministers meeting, and these country briefs have also helped the ministers to prepare themselves for the meeting. It has also promoted multi-stakeholder collaboration. It has also created a common understanding of the situation and the priorities within the respective countries. So basically, while the country briefs were being prepared, it has helped in the SMM preparations, which I've already mentioned. It has also helped the countries to have a relook into the policies, the strategies, and their existing plans. It has also helped them in engaging in the international processes using their own sector situation. Many of the countries also did a detailed sector analysis while preparation of these country briefs, and it has also ensured in strengthening the sector coordination mechanism for most of the countries. After the country briefs were prepared, it was submitted to the SWA Secretariat. The country briefs were then fed into the SMM follow-up package of suggested activities. So this is the way, in this way, the country briefs have helped the overall SWA Secretariat and also the respective countries. It is fed into the SMM follow-up package of suggested activities, and subsequently it has also helped in identifying and doing the SMM follow-up. For us, it has been really useful, and also what we understand is that for the different countries who submitted, it is proving to be a very useful process because they are also using these briefs to do the subsequent follow-ups. Through the country briefs, the mutual accountability mechanism process was also initiated, through which the countries developed commitments, and we have been discussing about these commitments and also the importance of these commitments. So country briefs helped as a process, the country briefs really helped in development of those commitments and also further fine-tuning of those commitments. It has helped in informing the sector processes and subsequently contributing to the national and international processes. The country briefs are also being widely disseminated nationally and also at the regional level through various platforms. One is, of course, the SWA platform, and we expect the countries to also use other platforms to disseminate the country briefs, which can help in actually inform others, and it can also help other countries to replicate certain processes. So basically, what do the country briefs tell us is that till now, 42 country governments have submitted the briefs, and those were shared ahead of the SMM. All those country briefs are available in our website, and once we share this PowerPoint, the link will also be shared with you, which can help you to access all the different 42 country briefs. Out of those 42 country briefs which are submitted, 7 countries were not at the SMM, they were not present at the SMM, but they still submitted it. And 7 other countries are not existing as SWA partners, but they submitted it, which is quite an encouraging thing which has happened. And 25 countries also shared their country overview in preparation of the 2017 high-level meeting which had happened. Next slide, please. One of the things which was found out is that, and which is very encouraging, is most of the country briefs discussed about the inequalities existing in their countries. And as we all know, the inequalities are a major challenge to the achievement of SDG 6. Many of the countries also did analysis of the reasons of these inequalities, and one of the biggest reasons which has been found by most of the countries is the lack of quality data, which is hampering planning. Because inequality data, it's hard to collect and it's also hard to report. So many of the countries are really finding it difficult to find quality data, and without quality data, it becomes really difficult also for them to do the subsequent planning. Another reason which was highlighted was the lack of financing and over-reliance on limited donor resources. Geographical factors is a big reason for the inequalities. There are geographical inaccessibilities which happen, due to which many of the vulnerable population, it's difficult to reach a large chunk of the vulnerable population. There are infrastructural difficulties which many of the countries highlighted. So it was also found that in many of the countries, they also tried to give solutions to tackle these inequalities. And one of the most common solutions which was highlighted was that more attention to inequalities in laws, policies, and strategies needs to be given. So a lot of mainstreaming has to be done in the national policies and strategies so that the issue of inequalities is addressed. Funding, again, like mobilization of funding for the vulnerable population is something which also needs to be really taken up to tackle the issue of inequalities. Also incorporating inequality in information systems and designing evidence-based interventions. And that is something which will go a small way in also addressing the data problem. So that is very, very critical because mainstreaming in the national information systems will be required. Many of the countries also suggested development of certain technical guidelines and implementing those to tackle the issue of inequalities. It was also felt that making leave no one behind should be made mandatory in contracts with service providers as far as implementation of projects is concerned. So it's encouraging to know that inequality has been given a lot of importance by many of the countries through their own country briefs. Next slide, please. So as we already mentioned, like the country briefs also fed into the national commitments which were submitted. So most of the briefs discussed the country priorities and the commitments. It also tried to present certain context about the overall national situation. The different sources was given from which priorities and commitments were extracted. So one of the next steps which is being suggested and which Sitali also touched upon is that to make sure that these commitments in country briefs are similar to those submitting using the Airtable, like the link which was given in one of the previous slides. So the commitments in the country briefs need to be similar to what has been uploaded in the Airtable. It was also found that more than half the countries plan to use the existing processes to track the progress on commitments, which is good because there shouldn't be any parallel processes taken up. The existing processes should be strengthened as much as possible. Many of the countries also have suggested using the budgeting and the planning process in conjunction with other ministries to actually implement those commitments. So that's a mainstreaming which is being suggested across various ministries, and incorporating it into the national budgeting process is something which is very critical, which can also address the issue of financing and inadequate funding. Some of the other strategies which were also suggested is joint supervision missions or high-level commissions, which again leads to the multi-stakeholder effort in addressing those commitments. Now, open defecation is another major issue which was identified and which has been fed into many of the commitments. And whereas we have already seen that sanitation is one of the priority areas for many of the countries, and because of which again open defecation is something which needs to be really addressed, and that is also in turn one of the big priority areas. Encouragingly, what was also found is that many of the countries also presented commitments on washing schools and washing healthcare facilities. That also speaks about mainstreaming with the health department, which is something extremely critical because wash and health has to go hand in hand. Some of the main themes of the commitments, again, I'll just touch upon those. Like many of the commitments touched upon policies and strategies, and in turn had a desire to address the sector strengthening aspects. Sector funding was of course touched upon. The multi-stakeholder effort through coordination, collaboration, and developing national leadership and strengthening of the leadership was also discussed. Increasing WASH infrastructure and, more importantly, access to WASH services was also touched upon, and monitoring and evaluation in terms of reviewing, strengthening, harmonizing the efforts, and also improving the data quality was also touched upon in many of these commitments through the country briefs. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as far as financing is concerned, some of the specific challenges which was highlighted through country briefs is that inadequate financing is the major challenge which was identified. It was also felt that there is an over-reliance or lack of accountability and sustainability in donor aids, because as we know, donor aids are very specific, not only in terms of program delivery, but also in terms of geographical reach. So that limitation was also highlighted. Many of the countries also expressed limitations in tracking the financial flows, and also mainly in terms of addressing the inequalities. Capacity issues were also highlighted in many of the briefs, and inequitable distribution of resources was also highlighted. And some of the priorities which were mentioned in those briefs is that one is to explore the private sector involvement, because private sector, again, in terms of resources, they have capacity, and it was felt that it's important to touch upon that particular sector to address the resource problem. Also, it was felt that it's important to design or review the financing orienting strategy for the sector, also establish and operationalize public funds for WASH. Innovation was something which was also suggested, and that is something which is extremely critical. And a lot of countries have actually adopted certain innovative measures and have also started piloting various projects using the limited resources what they are having. Increased public spending on WASH, that is something which, again, the sector needs to work upon and which many of the countries have expressed their willingness. Next slide, please. So overall, it was found that 8 countries plan to incorporate inequality considerations in sector information process systems as a way of addressing inequality. So that's one of the plans which around 8 of the countries have expressed. And overall, 14 countries expressed interest in exploring greater involvement of the private sector in WASH as an investor and also as a service provider, and also as a partner in public-private partnership, mainly in terms of also addressing the resource gaps which many of the countries are facing. Next slide, please. So all the country briefs which have been submitted, those are available in our website, and the links will be shared with you through this presentation once after the webinar. The SWA Secretariat is also doing an analysis of the country briefs as to what the briefs are telling us, and some portions of the analysis has already been touched upon in this presentation, but the detailed analysis document will be shared very soon and uploaded in the SWA website, which you can later access. As an SMM preparatory process, overall sample of the Francophone countries, mainly within the Africa region, a document is being prepared on that, and that is also being uploaded in the SWA website, which you can access, and that will give you an idea about the process which these countries have followed. Beyond the SMM, a document on Beyond the SMM has also been prepared, which actually touches upon suggestions for activities to leverage momentum generated around the sector ministers meeting, and that document also you will find in the SWA website. Also, SWA Secretariat, as always, is available for any support because we understand that it's very critical for you to actually finalize and fine-tune those commitments, and more importantly, operationalize those commitments. And in case if you need any support, please do let us know. The respective focal points are available within the SWA Secretariat, and we'll be happy to provide you support. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll stop here. And I'll be happy to take a few questions before we move on to the next part of the presentation.
Thank you so much, Siddhartha. That was great. Any questions? We can open the line. I haven't noticed any in the chat, but I'll go back and look at that quickly. No questions? All right. Well, there's no point.
Zubair is typing, so maybe we can open his line in case he wanted to say something. Zubair, we will open your line just now in case you wanted to say what you are typing. You can go ahead, Zubair.
Hi, Stanley. Yes.
Yes, Zubair, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you come up again? Yeah, sorry.
Now, I was saying that you were typing, and in case you were typing a question, we were just offering you the space to ask the question directly.
Okay. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. No, I was thinking that I would also like to know more in detail, or maybe at the end of the conversation, I can also ask question. But I can directly ask one question which is in my mind. That's Siddhartha, thank you very much for giving all of our this detailed information. But as in South and South Asian region, what we have come up with some of the briefing country as well as some commitments from government as well as the CSO constituencies. So I was thinking that how those commitments should be handled by the country person, because that is very, very important for a better coordination and better follow-up. It is undertaken from the very beginning by the focal point. So in this case, I think this is a very good opportunity for this webinar. In the coming webinar or coming Skype, we can also invite more country focal, so that would be really useful for us in coordination level. So this is just not a question, it's my opinion. That's it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Zubair, for that reflection. Yes, we put out an open invitation to any and everyone to participate in these webinars. It's not only SWA partners, although that generally is most of the participants. All are welcome, and we really do make a point to try and engage government focal points, but also focal points from all the other constituencies to try and encourage an opportunity to gather together around the webinar conversations, for sure. Any other questions or reflections that you might like to share?
Marisa, maybe just to say, in addition to what you've said in response to Zubair, so for Bangladesh, we have commitments that were tabled by civil society, and Bangladesh is one of the few countries where the government has not reached a point yet where they have shared commitment with us. So it would be good to work with you as partners in Bangladesh to see what can be done to get the government possibly to the point where they could share any commitment that align with their national plan already. I know that there were a lot of effort before to engage with the government, but we didn't get to a point where they were able to table commitment. But we do have commitment from civil society, and thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Sally. Other comments, reflections, questions? Okay, then I'd like to turn to our colleagues in Nepal. Thank you for joining us and for being willing to share this presentation. I believe our presenter is Mr. Tejraj Bhatt. Is that correct?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, thank you. Please, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone joining this webinar for this SWA accountability mechanism. Regarding the country commitment from our side, actually I'm representing regional Southeast Asia. So we couldn't establish a good link to all the country yet, but regarding the specific country, our country Nepal, regarding the SWA principle, since we have a new constitution in Nepal, so we regarding the human right of water and sanitation, it is in our constitution as well. It is established as a fundamental right. So there is no problem to adopting this human right to our national plan and other sectoral strategy. Since it is the duty of the government government, we have 3 tier of government to establish, to fulfill the fundamental right of water and sanitation, access to water and sanitation. So our vision is clear on that sense. So regarding the 2020, our commitment during SMM, sectoral minister meeting, it was listed on that. So unfortunately, our minister she couldn't participate. Still, we have a commitment on those. So sector convergence through conducting annual joint sector review and promoting sector-wide approach, thereby achievement coherent, harmonized and aligned sector, accordingly execute all intervention under one sector plan and one agreed outcome with annual national review and sector progress challenges toward the meeting SDP and SDG commitment. So from government side, we have 5 commitment from 5 commitment, endorsement of the WAS Act and regulation, institutional framework, adopting new federal structure. Since we have a new federal structure, so we have already tabled our WAS Act to the Parliament. We are expecting within our session is on during this period. We are expecting the enactment of the WAS Act according to the constitutional spirit as a fundamental right. This session or the next session. Similarly, endorse WAS sector development sector-wide approach. We are, according to the to harmonize the sector, this sector-wide approach we will be adapting. Establishment of operationalized sector monitoring framework, or the establishment of MIS system for the whole sector. That was the 3rd commitment. We are forming in that also. Similarly, we are, since our progress by 2020 review and endorsement of, we have already prepared sector development plan for the till 2030, plan for 2030 in line with SDG, a common program for all 3 government partners to working on this sector, long-term funding arrangement, including all these, in line with leave no one behind. So by 2020, we review the endorsement. Before 2020, we'll be endorsing this SDP. Similarly, by 2020, the Ministry of Water Supply will initiate what sector-wide approach, as I've already told you, sound prediction of commitment, mutual accountability from government and donors, with review mechanism to assess progress on regular basis and ensure the result are acted upon. Similarly, regarding the partner perspective, list of commitment which were tabled were establish to operationalize sector monitoring framework and MIS system, of course. Similarly, initiate the development total number of local government. Since we have no exact data for the water excess who is left behind. For that purpose, we are preparing the at least within 2019, 10% of local government WAS plan. We have 753 local government. Out of those, at least 10% was 10% local government will have the WAS plan within 2020, aligning with SDP and to achieve the SDGs. Similarly, by 2020, develop and implement WAS sector capacity development plan. It will be preparing a master plan for 3 tier of government to capacity development of all, even government sector as well as the non-government sector to capacity development of the regarding this sector. Similarly, benchmark and national standard for WAS services, ladder, especially water quality and sanitation, sewage management aspect. We'll be reviewing our national quality standard, water and wastewater. Regarding the partnership prospect, who will lead the participate in this process? Participated in the process, of course, the government will lead with the support of UNICEF, of course, other donor as well as the other partner working in the country regarding this sector. So, partner perspective regarding the what find the useful in your national process of term. Yeah, of course, data sources, link with the SWA framework, link to other processes such as NEGOR, GLASS, Africa-SAN, LATOSAN, or the SACOSAN and other. Similarly, GLASS is a process in Nepal, has been participating continuously. The SACOSAN is also event Nepal has never missed to participate. Regarding this process, of course, we need some help from SWA Secretariat and regional coordination regarding the approaching to coordinating with the other countries, since we are the focal person for Southeast Asia from government side. So we will be established. We have to we need to help from regional coordination. I think, of course, Siddharth is doing coordinating to other countries. I would like to request SWA to make some arrangement to meet at least once a year in regional basis. That will help to achieve our commitment and to join even those countries who has not given the commitment. They can also join likewise. Sincerely, similarly, regarding this process harmonizing to one and other countries, I think the one yearly calendar and the standard operating procedure, a framework we need for national and international wise. So for that purpose also, I request SWA Secretariat to outline of kindly if we can prepare the standing operator and calendar, how we can make arrangement in national wide and regional wise. That is our request regarding this. Thank you. If you have any suggestion or question, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bhatt, for that, for the presentation. Comments or questions, please? Siddhartha, not to put you on the spot immediately, but since you're the regional coordinator, I wondered if you might have any feedback to Mr. Bhatt's request for support from the Secretariat.
Hi, Marisa. Yes, okay.
Yes,
Can you just highlight that specific request? Like, of course, he spoke about the coordination and the necessary support. Any?
Yes, and as I understood it, and Mr. Bhatt, please correct us if I've misunderstood your request. But first, it sounds like some technical support that would help partners achieve the commitment. And you mentioned some standard operating procedures and what sounded to me like an annual meeting of the regional partners.
Yeah.
Right. So I think from the Secretariat point of view, we are ready to offer our support as much as possible into that. And one of the first things we can do is that we can just schedule a call to discuss the areas of support vis-a-vis implementation of these commitments and the areas where you actually need our intervention. So that's something. It will be great if we can schedule a call with the Nepal team and discuss about this after the webinar.
Thank you, Mr. Siddhartha. Regarding the, at least let's establish a coordination mechanism to at least regional countries, especially government and other partners. That one, and if we can develop a calendar, yearly calendar for each country can be agree upon on the yearly calendar, and the meet if possible meet yearly basis, at least in the regional. Then, to share our experiences, our commitment, and those things. That was our request, actually.
No, I think that's a great idea. Like to just have to convene a regional meet within the South Asia region. Like ideally, it will be good to also have other Asian countries, but to convene a South Asia meet would be easier, and we can have a separate meet for the other Asian countries. So that's something we can always talk about.
Okay.
And we might also need support from other partners in convening that.
Okay.
So I think that's a great idea. We can take it forward.
Okay. Thank you. Regarding the commitment, we are firm on our commitment. We are working online with this commitments. So we hope, since we are sticking with SDG, our focus on government is we are highly committed to achieve the SDG. Our even finance minister and sectoral minister, they are aware of this commitment. So this year budget, it is the third priority after the health and education. The third priority is water and sanitation from government side, because of to achieve the SDG. But of course, the donor, the resources, we have limited resources, the government own resources. So we like to use this SWA platform, of course, for the resource generation from donor side. That then only we can be we will nearly achieve the SDG. So since I already told, this is the water and sanitation is established as a fundamental right. So there is no way to leave no one behind. Though this is by our constitution.
Very much for that. Sir, go ahead.
Marisa?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is Zubair from CSO member from South Asia.
Yes.
Thank you, Surendraji, for giving your good overview of the overall mechanism. I was just thinking to share with you the CSO process, that how that has been undertaken in your country, and at the same time, so far we know that from the beginning of this year, we had a lot of push to work with the government as well as the other constituencies, so that we have come up with all of our separate commitment. So it's not a question, or it may be the reflection, or you may think that how we could be more work with hand to hand, because I liked your approach that we should have a coordination mechanism more strengthening, and we have to have more realistic. And as you said, I also agree fully that for the better coordination, we have to sit once in a year at least. So that will be really useful. So, for example, from the government country focal, then I know that Nepal is the leading the government representation for the steering committee, and the CSO steering committee, we are here, and there is not that much, or maybe no one from the private sector as well as the research and other constituencies. So that's really important for making it useful, because this is in we have all of our works and we are engaged in different activities, but for this post commitment, we really need to have a close coordination, and I think Siddhartha is doing excellent in relation to coordination, and especially with the relation with the UNICEF country organizations or country office. We can also have a good coordination, because it's not only the issue of the identifying the points or the good numbers of commitment. It also how to make it more realistic commitment and make it happen to change. So this is my reflection in this case, that the CSO commitment should also be the part of the whole process, and I think more or less it is very similar to all of the South Asian countries. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you for your reflection. Of course, in line with what your reflection is, we are also in line with the same theme. But I request SWA regarding the coordination. Let's make a standard operating procedure how to coordinate within countries, government, private sector, and the CSO. Let's how to establish in the national wise and the regional wise, regional basis. So that will give us a guideline to establish a good coordination, so even not leaving behind the people of water and sanitation, even the opportunity to take part in the process. CSO, private sector, this should also not leaving behind to this process. They should also participate. So that is we are thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Ideally, it should be a multi-stakeholder involvement. It shouldn't be only the government and the UNICEFs there. It should be all the players who are involved directly into the process.
Yeah.
Do we have any additional questions or comments for Mr. Bhatt?
Marisa, this is Mousthafa, who I have on WhatsApp, who's been trying to make an intervention. The only thing I wanted to say was that, so I think this is good, and the comment about CSOs and others, how they are involved, I think that's a very welcome question. I think Mr. Bhatt suggested some process going forward. One in terms of a regional conversation for focal points, and then the other one in terms of some suggestions on, what he called standard operating procedures. I think what we could do perhaps, because this will not be consistent from country to country given the different contexts, is maybe when partners get together in that regional conversation, to pick a few examples in terms of experiences that are there around how partners are engaging with different actors. And we can also use some of the pioneer countries, particularly on the mutual accountability mechanism in terms of how they're engaging. So just to note that really good idea, and that I think we can find ways to go around it to provide some suggestions. Thank you so much.
Sitali and Marisa, we have with me the Director General of Water Supply and Department of Water Supply here, and his alternative focal person as well. Is with me, with Dandi ji, and the Surendra ji is joining this meeting, and I'll request Sunil ji for a few words regarding our commitment.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you, SWA, for having this webinar. I've been listening from the very beginning, and it is really very useful. So I would like to add only one thing, that regarding our commitment, we have, though we have not separate constituency, for example, from private sector or from research and learning institutes, but what do we have at present is that we have 8 thematic working groups. For example, for water quality improvement, for sanitation, for DRM, so on and so forth. So we have been, it is a multi-stakeholder forum with 8 thematic area, where representation from civil society, learning and universities, academic sector, and also government, non-governmental sector, development partners, we all are involved through this 8 thematic area. And that is how we also conduct joint sector review in our country. So it is a multi-stakeholder forum is already in place, and we will further strengthen it in coming days. So, and regarding commitment, all the stakeholders, partners to our this thematic area are committed to work together and to achieve this SDG targets, national targets. Thank you. This is all from my side.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's really helpful to understand as well. So I'd like to thank our colleagues in Nepal for their presentation. This was very interesting, very helpful, and thank you to everyone also for the discussion. I'd like to move next to our colleagues in Bhutan, Mr. Karma Dupchuk. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, and please forgive me if I've mispronounced it. Are you ready to take over the presentation?
Hello, Marisa. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so we are very sorry to inform you that Mr. Karma Dupchuk could not join us for this webinar.
Okay.
So we have 3 of us here, 2 of my colleagues from Ministry of Works and Human Settlement, and myself from Ministry of Health. So I am Chindu Game Tamang. I am from the Public Health Engineering Division of Ministry of Health, and other 2 colleagues will introduce themselves.
Hello, Marisa. I'm Ugen Wongchuk and I'm from the Water and Sanitation Division under the Ministry of Works and Human Settlement.
Hi, my name is Game Singh and I also work for Water and Sanitation, Ministry of Works and Human Settlement.
Excellent. Well, thank you. So then will you all be taking us through the presentation?
Yes, Marisa, definitely.
Wonderful. Okay.
So can we start?
Please, yes, and just let us know when we need to move the slides.
Okay, thank you so much. So before beginning with the presentation, there are some very basic background information about the WASH system here in Bhutan, WASH sector, which you should be familiar with before we take you through the presentation. So the rural WASH that is looked after by Ministry of Health, we have a program called the Rural Sanitation and Hygiene Program under the Public Health Engineering Division of Ministry of Health. So that looks after the rural WASH. And we also have the Water and Sanitation Division from Ministry of Works and Human Settlement that looks after the urban WASH. So we have so that's why the three of us are together here for this presentation. And for your information, this presentation was also jointly prepared by both PHED and WSD. Again, before beginning with the presentation, I would like to just tell you about the institutional capacity or the institutional arrangement that we have here in Bhutan. So for WASH, we have implementing partners at the national level, at the district level, and the community level. So at the national level, we have the National Environment Commission, the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Works and Human Settlement, Council for Regional Affairs, and the CSOs and private sectors. So all these are under the national level. And at the district level, we have the District Environmental Section, we have District Health Sector, District Education Sector, District Engineering Sector, and the monastic institutions. And at the community level, we have the basic health units, the BHUs, the schools, the GEOC administration, that is GEOC is the block, so block administrations, and the communities. So with this, this is just the background information of the institutional arrangement and how the WASH sector here, it is here in Bhutan. So beginning with the presentation. So first of all, we have the list of commitments which were tabled for the 2019 sector ministers meeting. So first one was to establish the baseline for SDG 6.2. Then 100% basic sanitation coverage in more than 50% of the GEOCs, that is the blocks of our country, by 2020. Then to explore proper cost recovery mechanism to meet out operational expenditure for urban WASH infrastructure. To develop an inclusive national roadmap for sanitation and hygiene. Ensure appropriate technology and infrastructure for safely managed sanitation and safe emptying practices. Strengthen the existing national coordination mechanism, the BWASH cluster. So since we will be talking a lot about this BWASH cluster, so again, some background information is necessary, I feel like that. So this BWASH cluster is our national coordination mechanism. So it is a meeting that we have with all the relevant WASH stakeholders, which includes the national government, the ministry, the CSOs, the private sectors, the donor agencies. So this is a platform in our country in which all of us actually come together to discuss whatever issues or challenges that we are having with the WASH sector in our country. And then it's a 2-day meeting, so a lot of discussions are done, and then at the end of the second day, we come up with resolutions, a set of resolutions which are jointly agreed by all the stakeholders present in the meeting, and then it is again signed by all the stakeholders, the technical working group members. So this is the very important, actually, the existing national coordination mechanism that we have in our country. Okay, the next commitment was to review and harmonize the existing monitoring systems and indicators in line with JMP definitions. And the last one, to establish partnership with local research institutes, colleges, and training institutes for improved researches in sanitation and hygiene sector. Next slide, please. Is it audible, and am I not going too fast?
No, you're great. You're perfect. We can hear you loud and clear, and this is great.
Okay, thank you so much. So now we have the inclusion of those 8 commitments in the national processes. So how these commitments have been integrated in our national processes. So for the first commitment, it is very detailed for every commitment. So for the first commitment, that is to establish baseline for SDG 6.2. So this commitment is in line with our 12th 5-year plan. And it was also a resolution of the 3rd B WASH cluster, the WASH cluster meeting I just described. So we recently had the 4th B WASH cluster meeting last month. So this 3rd B WASH cluster meeting was held in 2018. So it is reflected as one of the resolutions for the 3rd B WASH cluster meeting. So as note it as a resolution, it was developed in consultation with all the relevant WASH stakeholders present in the cluster meeting. And the questionnaire for carrying out the survey to establish the baseline for SDG 6.2, it was reviewed and developed by a technical working group. Actually, it was reviewed 5 or 6 times. So by the technical working group. So the technical working group consisted of the Public Health Engineering Division from Ministry of Health, the Water and Sanitation Division from Ministry of Works and Human Settlement. We also had a research focal point of Ministry of Health. We had UNICEF, SNB, and we have an agency called Ability Bhutan Society. So for incorporating the disability component into the questionnaire, we also had them with us as the technical working group. And the final set of questionnaire that was prepared was then presented to the department head, that is the Department of Public Health of Ministry of Health, and it was then endorsed by the high-level committee of Ministry of Health. So the second commitment that we have is 100% basic sanitation coverage in more than 50% of the blocks of the country by 2020. So again, this is in line with the 12th 5-year plan that we have. And the commitment that was tabled for the sector ministers meeting, it was in consultation with PHED, UNICEF and SNB, because that is the Rural Sanitation and Hygiene Program team we have. Next slide, please. The third commitment was to develop an inclusive national roadmap for sanitation and hygiene. So that is it is in the regional process. It was a planned action for 2018 to 2020 Sakosan 7. Number 4 was to ensure appropriate technology and infrastructure for safely managed sanitation and safe emptying practices. So that is in line with SDG goal 6.2, and again it is in line with our 12th 5-year plan, and it was also included in as a planned action for Sakosan 7. Then to strengthen the existing national coordination mechanism, the B-WASH cluster. So it is in line with the 3rd B-WASH cluster resolution that we had, that is to engage the lead and relevant stakeholders. Can we have this? Stakeholders for activities carried out by the CSOs or the NGOs at the local level to support and streamline with the national policies and strategies to optimize resource utilization. So as you can see at the 3rd B-WASH cluster meeting, we had a resolution to actually strengthen the existing national coordination mechanism. So we did some work for that. The Ministry of Works and Human Settlement actually engaged many CSOs and NGOs at the local level at the 4th B-WASH cluster meeting. So again, it is also included as a planned action for Sakosan 7. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next commitment, explore proper cost recovery mechanism to meet out operational expenditure for urban WASH infrastructure. Again, it is a planned action for Sakosan 7. And review and harmonize the existing monitoring systems and indicators in line with JMP definitions. So we had a resolution, back please. We had a resolution for the 2nd B-WASH cluster meeting, that is develop harmonized national WASH indicators in line with the SDG indicators and progressively measure the progress using these indicators. So it was a resolution for 2nd B-WASH cluster as well as the 3rd B-WASH cluster. We had this resolution, strengthen harmonization of WASH data collection. And also the 2 lead ministries that we have here, Ministry of Works and Human Settlement and Ministry of Health, we have aligned the WASH SDG indicators with our national key result areas for the 12th 5-year plan. And it is also included as a planned action for Sakosan 7. Next slide, please. The last commitment, the establish partnership with local research institutes, colleges, and training institutes for improved skills and researches in sanitation and hygiene sector. It is also a plant action for Sakosan 7. So we will be giving you details about who is leading and who is participating in achieving these commitments. But this is just very brief information on how each of these commitments have been integrated in our national processes. So next slide, please. Okay, so how does mutual accountability mechanism support, strengthen, or build on national processes? So as I informed you earlier, the B-Wash cluster meeting is the platform that we have in our country in which we can gather all the WASH stakeholders. We come together and we have vigorous discussions on WASH. So, and that is an annual gathering. So we consider this as a very important platform in our country. And it is either hosted by Ministry of Health or Ministry of Works and Human Settlement. So in the B-Wash cluster meeting, we have the government agencies, donor agencies, CSOs, and private sectors all coming together and discussing the issues and challenges and coming forward with resolutions at the end of the two-day meeting, as I said earlier. And the resolutions are jointly signed by all the stakeholders present. And the Secretariat, which is either the Ministry of Health or Ministry of Works and Human Settlement, collects information on the progress and achievements of the implementing agencies quarterly. So before the next B-Wash cluster meeting is held, what the Secretariat does is quarterly, all the implementing agencies and the collaborating agencies for each of the resolution, they are contacted, and the update on how much they have achieved or what is the progress is all collected, and they are reminded of the commitments that they have made during the WASH cluster meeting. So all the implementing agencies, they have to report back to the cluster with all the updates on achievements, on the commitments, or with strong justifications. If they could not achieve the commitment fully, they have to come up with very strong justifications for the entire B-Wash cluster stakeholders. So as a note we have here, for the third B-Wash cluster meeting, we had one of the resolution as share knowledge and learnings from the regional and international WASH related conferences, meetings, workshops, seminars through relevant platform. So in order to exercise or in order to fulfill our resolution for as this was one of the resolution for the third B-Wash cluster meeting, so there was a presentation on the 2019 sector ministers meeting to all the members recently during the fourth B-Wash cluster meeting last month. So in that presentation, the members of the B-Wash cluster meeting, they were all briefed on what SWA is, what SMM is, and who all attended the meeting. And they were also very briefly described on the ministerial dialogues that took place, and also the commitments that were tabled. So everything was presented to the members of the B-Wash cluster meeting. The next slide, please. Now, who led and participated in the process? So the process of tabling the commitments, the 8 commitments that we have, was actually led by the 2 lead ministries, MOWHS and MOH, Ministry of Health and Ministry of Works and Human Settlement. And the commitments table were all discussed during the National Stakeholder Consultation meeting, the B-Wash cluster meeting, in the presence of all the stakeholders. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we have the details on who led and participated in the process of tabling the commitments for each of the commitment. So again, for the first commitment, establish baseline for SDG 6.2. It was developed in consultation with all the relevant WASH stakeholders during the third B-Wash cluster, because it was one of the resolution for the third B-Wash cluster meeting. The questionnaire reviewed and developed by the technical working group, which included the Public Health Engineering Division, the Water and Sanitation Division, the Research Focal Point of MOH, UNICEF, SNB, ABS. We have the National Statistical Bureau and the WHO. The survey to obtain the baseline for safely managed sanitation, it has been completed. And we also have the preliminary findings for the healthcare facilities, and that has already been shared to all the relevant stakeholders. And the analysis and report writing for the rural households is ongoing. So for the second commitment, 100% basic sanitation coverage in more than 50% of the blocks of the country by 2020. So it is the Public Health Engineering Division of Ministry of Health taking the lead in conducting the inception workshops for the local leaders. We also have mason training on improved toilet construction for at least 90 to 100 masons of the program intervened districts. And we have the CDH workshops, that is the community development for health workshops for the people of rural communities. So UNICEF, SNB, we have Ability, Bhutan Society, we have Gross National Happiness Commission and Ministry of Education and some other relevant stakeholders who take part in the inception workshop, which is done along with the local leaders and the health sectors, health officials. And it is PHED and SNV. SNV provides the technical support, who jointly conduct the Mason training and the community development for health workshops for training the health assistants. And PHED, we have covered 13 districts with our rural sanitation and hygiene program as of June 2019. Next slide, please. Okay, the third commitment, develop an inclusive national roadmap for sanitation and hygiene. So the draft national sanitation and hygiene policy, it is to be endorsed by the cabinet. The roadmap will be developed only after the endorsement of the policy is done. So since the policy is still under review in Ministry of Works and Human Settlement, the process of development of roadmap, it could not be initiated as of now. So for the fourth commitment, ensure appropriate technology and infrastructure for safely managed sanitation and safe emptying practices. So again, it is the Water and Sanitation Division and Public Health Engineering Division taking the lead. The Rural Sanitation and Hygiene Program from PHED, we are promoting the twin pit pour flush toilet during all the inception workshops, the CDH workshops, and the Mason training. So during the Mason trainings, the Masons are trained to construct a twin pit pour flush toilet using the Y chamber. And we also have a finalized draft on fecal sludge management, which was jointly prepared by PHED, UNICEF, and SNV, and it will be put up for endorsement by August 2019. So Ministry of Works and Human Settlement explored and implemented low-cost technology for safe management of wastewater using the Dojo Joka system and DWATS. So the Water and Sanitation Division has also designed sewer network for one of the districts in East and for the safe disposal of wastewater. So WSD is also going to conduct awareness workshop on guidelines for differently able-friendly construction. To incorporate accessible wash facilities in all new public or institutional toilet constructions or renovations, as it is one of the resolutions for the 4th B-Wash cluster meeting. Next slide, please. Commitment number 5, strengthen the existing national coordination mechanism, B-Wash cluster. So it is again the Water and Sanitation Division and Public Health Engineering Division taking the lead. And all the members of B-Wash cluster, we have government agencies, CSOs, private sectors, and donor agencies as the collaborating agencies. So the Water and Sanitation Division from Ministry of Works and Human Settlement coordinated with the cluster member, that is one of the CSOs, the Bhutan Toilet Organization, and developed an IEC material called Yalama Apa. And the Water and Sanitation Division also, in consultation with the relevant stakeholders, developed and printed the standard operating procedures for wash-in emergencies for distribution to the districts. Water and Sanitation Division has also conducted capacity building of the engineers and technicians on wash-in emergencies, and they also organized the 4th B-Wash cluster meeting with the theme enhancing engagement of CESOs and private sectors in wash sector last month. The 6th commitment, explore proper cost recovery mechanism to meet out operational expenditure for urban wash infrastructure. So Ministry of Works and Settlement, they are initiating formulation of tariff guideline for that. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah. Commitment 7, review and harmonize the existing monitoring systems and indicators in line with JMP definitions. So we have the National Environment Commission taking lead for water. We have Water and Sanitation Division and Public Health Engineering Division taking lead for sanitation. And the Water and Sanitation Division, they have already conducted rapid assessment for obtaining the baseline data on safely managed sanitation. And as I informed earlier, PHED has also carried out the survey, and the reports will be soon finalized and shared. So the Gross National Happiness Commission looks after the overall existing monitoring system and harmonization. The 8th and the last commitment, establish partnership with local research institutes, colleges and training institutes for improved skills and researches in sanitation and hygiene sector. So Public Health Engineering Division, it is already working with one of the medical universities in Bhutan. So we have our community development for health actually incorporated in their syllabus as a module, and we will be upgrading their module as and when we upgrade our CDH manual. And PHED and WSD, we are also planning to collaborate with the College of Science and Technology, that is the engineering college in Bhutan, and also with some other technical institutes as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if you have any questions, I have myself and my 2 other colleagues from Ministry of Works and Human Settlement to answer.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Chandu. This was a very excellent presentation, and I appreciate the level of detail that you went into to describe all these various elements of the commitment that Bhutan tabled. I think it is a very interesting presentation for other partners to see this information and to sort of learn about the process and your steps. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to put forward to the team from Bhutan?
I have a question, Marisa.
Yes.
Chundu, regarding the BWASH cluster, just wanted to know whether players like ADB and World Bank are also part of it.
Thank you very much, Siddhartha. Actually, we have this BWASH cluster usually at our national level, so we just have the national stakeholders present. We don't usually have the World Bank invited and donors. As donors, we have UNICEF and the development partners, SNV, UNICEF and WHO, but we do not have World Bank.
Or ADB.
Or ADB.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Marisa. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Bhutan team. Yeah, this is Zubair from Bangladesh, representing the CSO constituency. I think this is a very elaborated and very good presentations with a lot of information, and I think many of your commitments already identified very well, and at the same time, in fact, Bhutan is much more ahead in any other countries in the South Asia. So this is one of our opportunity to learn each other. That's I was just thinking that how the BWASH platform works, while the CSO representatives, how they're gathering and how they're feeling, because on behalf of CSO they should come from the grassroots voice and the peoples from those who are leaving behind. On behalf of them, they should talk about this situation, because what is happening, what is good, that's fine, but what is not happening, the CSO should bring those questions. So WASH platform is giving that opportunity, or how are you managing? Because it's just for learning. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I would like to answer this question. So the BWASH cluster that we have in our country, so it's a platform that provides an inclusive coordination mechanism for all the stakeholders related to WASH in the country. So be it CSOs, development partners, the government agencies, and other private agencies. So they all come together yearly, annually to discuss among themselves, putting up their experiences, sharing knowledges. So be it anything related to WASH, we come together and discuss on that, sir. So the question that you raised is very much relevant, and that does happen in the BWASH cluster. So we come up with, at the end of the day, we come up with resolutions that everyone agrees to, and we try to implement it within the same till the next BWASH cluster comes, and the results so far have been very good, sir. So these are very much addressed in the BWASH cluster that we do. Thank you, sir.
I know we are. Sorry, yes?
Okay.
Did I clear did I clear your doubts, sir?
Yeah. No, this is good. This is good. That's because it's the inclusive platform. That's very nice. And well, yeah, this is somehow it's not happening in other countries, especially the engagement of CSOs in within the all other constituencies are not happening. So that's why some of the commitments what we are trying to commit, but during the follow-up situation we can also understand better. So I think Siddhartha is here, so some of the good learnings we can share each other's. That's how all the constituency members are sitting together and come up with a good resolution or decisions like Bhutan. Yeah, thank you very much, Bhutan.
So thank you. Sorry, yes?
Marisa, Sneha here from FANSA.
Yes, Sneha. Let me also just say, Sneha, sorry, before you ask this question, we are typically at the end of the webinar right now. We know that we still had a few more people that wanted to make comments, including Mr. Mousthafa from the Maldives. So just to say, if anyone needs to leave the conversation, we certainly understand that, and we are grateful for everyone's time. If people still have an opportunity to stay on the line and to ask a few more questions, and our presenters are available, then please let's continue on. But I just wanted to say that. Sorry to cut you off, but please go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, I have already typed my suggestion on in there. Congratulations to the Bhutan team. I think the process is very well explained and it's really fantastic. If you can just make a brief note of this and circulate so that we can, those who are absent in the webinar would get benefited out of this. So if they can circulate a brief note, we could circulate among all the FANSA colleagues.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you, Sneha. So we will definitely share a brief note on this.
Thank you.
Hello, Marisa.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Lajana from Nepal.
Yes.
Right. I would just like to mention, I very much I appreciate the presentation made by Bhutan. It's very good. And just in the context of the CSO's participation, in Nepal also we have the national level WASH coordination committee led by the Ministry for WASH, Water Supply, Ministry for Water and Supply, right? And there is an opportunity, or this coordination committee, and then there at the national, at the district level, city level, and at the village level, similar committees are existing and working, and there's an opportunity for the CSOs and all of the stakeholders to participate. So we do have a very much similar kind of system working successfully, and this coordination committee also has actually the multi-stakeholders committee has contributed a lot in making the country in leading the country towards ODF status now, right? So I would just like to mention that we do have a similar kind of system working very successfully working in Nepal as well.
Yes, thank you for making that intervention. And Siddhartha, maybe I'll just make the point in that there's opportunities for follow-up with both Bhutan and Nepal for maybe a little bit of a more in-depth examination of some of these things. Mr. Satali, are you able to help us connect with Mr. Mousthafa?
Yes, Mousthafa, can you hear us? He was on the line, and just right now it says reconnecting, but he's been waiting, and he really wants to make an intervention. So just give me a second so I can just send him.
Okay. Okay, well, let me just take a moment then to ask if there's any other questions or comments that anyone would like to put forward.
Activities, we try to put it in our annual activities.
So
I have a question, Marisa. I have a question for our colleagues in Bhutan.
Yes, sir.
And this is just a follow-up to Siddhartha's question about, and I appreciate their response that the Baywash cluster is for local agencies. Could you just clarify, because I was not clear as to whether you said that there's another one which is just for cooperating partners. I understand that UNICEF is involved in the Baywash cluster, but for example, the other cooperating partners that Siddhartha asked, do they meet on their own? And what's the interface with the BWASH cluster? Thank you. Oh, by the way, Mousthafa is now back on the line.
Thank you very much for the question. So when we said we have UNICEF SNV with us during the BWASH cluster, it is the country office representatives that we have with us during the meeting.
Okay. Thank you so much. And do the others, like the Asian Development Bank and the World Bank, do they meet separately as donors or they don't?
No, till now they haven't.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Should we hear from Mr. Mousthafa? Is that possible, Satali?
I have him on the line, but I think he's muted the line on his side. Mousthafa, can you hear me? Yes, he's here.
Yes, yes.
Could you make your intervention? And Marisa, let me know if you can hear him.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Marisa. Sorry that I was not able to get connection.
That's okay. Please go ahead.
Yes, I'm Mousthafa from Maldives, and my colleague Mr. Fazil is with me. I just would like to give a brief about what we have been doing here since the last meeting held in Costa Rica. As we have we mentioned in that meeting also, like our commitment is. Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So our commitment, the major commitment is that by next 4 years, actually, we are going to have the total coverage, both water and storage. So give all islands, all inhabited islands to be given water supply and storage systems connection. So by 2018, actually, the coverage we have achieved by, for example, if you look at the storage, it is like in terms of population, 66% being given like island-wide storage connections to houses, and in terms of water, 50% of the population given. So it means that still, since the Maldives is based on small islands, we still have a lot of islands to be covered. Like in terms of storage, we still have 152 islands, and in terms of water, 153 islands. But we hope we'll be able to achieve by next 4 years. And even recently, since actually we had hello?
We're here.
We can hear you.
Okay. So that's the coverage. So we are slowly we are moving that coverage. Apart from that coverage, in parallel, we are doing other work. Like for example, the key challenge we have is maintaining the services. Like we have the utility companies to give the services in our islands, and plus strengthening the regulatory we are now drafting an act for better governance of the sector. Also, we have already drafted a regulation to strengthen the regulatory structure of the sector. So hopefully we'll be able to get through this the act and regulation very soon. And also I would like to highlight that we also have issue of treatment plants, because actually since we are disposing, discharging the sewage into marine environment, and some of the systems are with treatment and some are without treatment. So we need it to be very helpful if we get like assistance, like support for having some studies to enhance the STP part of these storage systems. Also, I would like to highlight the capacity, because since we are putting these systems on small islands, individual separate islands, so the utility service, they face a lot of challenges of delivering the services on a sustainable basis. So that, like, it will be. I heard from one colleague from Nepal. I remember that to have a regional coordination approach among the countries, it will be very helpful. Like among the countries, we will have some better ideas and knowledge from. So I think if SWA Secretariat or from some other means could facilitate regional level meetings, so it will be very helpful for countries. I also feel to be a helpful suggestion. So that's basically what we have written, and we are moving forward with the commitment, and we hope that we'll be able to reach by next 4 years. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mousthafa. I think with Satali's help, I want to try and recap a little bit of what he said, just because it might have been a little challenging for some people to make out maybe everything he was stating. So as I understood it, Mr. Mousthafa was giving the updates about coverage and some of the challenges with coverage in Maldives, and that they're currently drafting an act for better governance of the water and sanitation hygiene sector. That he also heard the comments from Nepal recommending a regional gathering to help facilitate learning between SWA partners, and thought that was a very useful and helpful idea, that they're moving forward with the commitments that were tabled at the SMM. Satali, did I miss any other major point that was made there?
No, I think only two. There was also a part about studies that they would like to do, and also the aspect about capacity. And I think that Mr. Mousthafa, I think you point out very well that maybe this regional conversation could be the start of identifying what are those studies that you'd like to do, and where potentially that support could come from. And then also looking at sort of the areas where you want to take further lessons from other countries, and how we could help support that process, or how other partners could also help support that process. So I think for me, it's coming back very squarely to sort of having this regional conversation in one way or the other as a critical sort of fulcrum for taking part of these sort of learnings forward. There are low-hanging fruits of things we can do now. For example, the note from Bhutan, that could be done very easily, but then there are some that might be in the long term, might require some support. I think initially Mr. Mousthafa's point also about sustainability was a really critical one, and maybe we could look to other partners who are, for example, from the Dutch government, who are also working on this point of sustainability, on what could be learned there. So anyway, I just thought that I think they were very critical points, and some of which we could look for next points of a core in terms of specific follow-up actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful.
Also, just to add a point, Sitali and Marisa, so Mr. Mousthafa also talked about the regulations and the need of strengthening the regulations. So it will be useful, Mr. Mousthafa, if you can just share with us the existing regulations, if you have any document on that, and if possible, we can give some feedback and try to help you in strengthening those.
Thank you, Siddhartha, for that suggestion. Actually, unfortunately, right now everything is in our local language. But in the meantime, we will make a translation, unofficial translation, and share our partners. So I think that is a good idea, and we may get good feedback because actually like if we look at Maldives. The setting here, it is very different. Like, so we may have our own way of focusing and addressing the issues, and so it will be very helpful. So we will make a translation once, because we already have a draft of Water Act plus all the regulations, and we are now reviewing all these things. And once it is done, and we will make an official translation and share. It is very helpful.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siddharth.
So I'd like to take this time again to thank all of our presenters, the team from Nepal, the team from Bhutan, Sitali, Siddhartha, to everyone who asked some comments and questions. This was a really excellent discussion, and it was a very long discussion, but I think a very, very useful and hopefully helpful one. So thank you so much to all of you for your time. Just a couple requests that I'd like to make on behalf of the Secretariat. If you would take a couple moments to look at the commitments that you and your either country or organization tabled, and just think about them in terms of a SMART context, and think through if you see any areas that you might be able to make more specific, or to add timelines or things like that, and you'd like to resubmit them, we are more than happy to take them and update that information in the database. That we're certainly happy to do that. If you haven't tabled commitments, this is an opportunity to do so. We are open to taking commitments at any point in time, but maybe while this conversation is fresh in your minds, it might be an opportunity to gather together with some partners and consider commitments that could be tabled. And lastly, just to say that the Secretariat team is here to support partners in whatever way we can. So if you have any questions, if you'd like to have any in-depth conversations with the Secretariat team, please let us know. Most of the participants on this webinar I know work really closely with Siddhartha, but just to say that there's other team members happy to support and be helpful as well. So again, thank you so much. Our next webinar will be towards the end of July, and we'll be sending out information about that. In the next several days, you'll have the summary of this webinar and links to the recording and to the PowerPoint presentation. So again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk to everybody very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marisa.
Thank you from Team Bhutan.
Thank you so much, everyone.